we are back. Welcome to the League Cup semi-final second leg predictions video after an absolutely disastrous predictions video weekend in terms of my Premier League predictions. As always, we are fully transparent on this channel, even though all the information I gave was near enough correct. The predictions themselves were absolutely horrid, but we have an opportunity over the course of the next couple of days to try and right those wrongs with two semi-final second leg predictions in the Carabao Cup. And if you look at the prediction screen, you will know that we actually got both of the first leg predictions wrong as well. I did Arsenal and Liverpool to both win, and it was in fact the underdogs in both fixtures that got the result on both of those occasions, meaning that Newcastle come into this week with a 2-goal lead over Arsenal, and Spurs hold a 1-0 lead travelling to Anfield. As always, before we get into it, if you haven't done so already, please do consider dropping a like on this video if you do enjoy all of my predictions series, and subscribe to the channel if you are new around here. We will have the FA Cup predictions coming for you on Friday morning, and then of course Premier League predictions will return at some point at the start of next week for that Liverpool-Everton game, before we then move on to the rest of the next round of Premier League fixtures next weekend, and then back into European football once again. So like I say, make sure you're subscribed with notifications turned on so don't miss out on any of those videos. And without any further ado, let's get into it. Two semi-final second legs in the League Cup, and as well, no better place to start than the opening game, which is of course tomorrow night's game, which is Newcastle taking on Arsenal. As we've mentioned, 2-0 Newcastle are already leading coming into this, but we'll start with the team that are behind. I'm going to do that in both games. So we'll start off with Arsenal, and we'll talk about what these sides have done since that first leg. Now, Arsenal backed up their defeat by losing to Manchester United in the FA Cup on penalties, and then drawing to Aston Villa in the Premier League. But other than that, in the 7 games that they have played, they have won the other 5, which does, of course, include that 5-1 victory over Manchester City at the weekend, meaning they're actually on a 6-game unbeaten run now, winning 4 in a row. For Newcastle, they've actually only played 5 games since the first leg, and they have lost their last 2 home games, showing some very, very poor performances in both. It just seems their sort of usual energy and effort that you see from Newcastle just hasn't really been there, certainly in those last 2 home games. Yes, they did win against Southampton in between, but it's been really poor in those 2 performances against Bournemouth and Fulham over the last 2 weeks. And when you combine that with that 5-1 victory for Arsenal at the weekend, even though Newcastle hold a 2-goal lead, you've definitely got to consider Arsenal the favourites, certainly for this match. Whether or not they're going to have enough to win the tie, I guess remains to be seen. It all going to come down to how and when the goals are scored. Now, in terms of team selection, off the back of the 5-1 victory, Arsenal decided to not go into the transfer market on deadline day to pick up another forward. I mean, why would you? You scored 5 goals against the defending champions. Who needs a striker when you can already score 5 against them? For Newcastle, no incomings, but Lloyd Kelly has left for Juventus, so their squad is a little bit thinner. But to be fair, he wasn't exactly playing anyway. In terms of starting lineups, the real question marks, as always with Newcastle since Nick Pope has come back, is who will play in goal, especially given the fact that Dubravka has been conceding in the last few weeks. For Arsenal, the question marks are over whether or not Nwanieri deserves a start. For me, he probably does. The goals that he scored in the Champions League and at the weekend were absolutely sublime, and I think he's probably done enough to get himself a start. There are no fresh injury or suspension concerns coming into this match. And like I said, it's just a case of whether or not Newcastle are going to hold on to this lead. Newcastle, throughout this season, have proven they are a better side when they are defending a lead. I know that sounds a bit daft to say, the side that's winning plays better. But it just seems to be the pattern. I think if Newcastle concede first, they always then tend to struggle to pull it back. Meanwhile, when they're winning a match, they tend to be all right. So you've got to bear that in mind. Yes, on the night, the score is 0-0, but Newcastle do hold a 2-0 lead in the tie. And in my head, that will be enough to get them through the tie. I'm just not convinced it's going to be enough to get them through the night, though. My expectation is that Arsenal do go there and win. It's just a case of, like I've already said, will they score early? How many can they score early? And will it be enough to get the victory? In my head, if Newcastle score any goals before Arsenal score 2, this game is over. But if Arsenal can get a 2-goal lead in that first half, I can see them pushing on and getting the victory. I'm not quite convinced that's what's going to happen, though. I think Newcastle have enough to hold on to get the victory in the tie. but not enough for the night. I'm going for a 2-1 victory to Arsenal, which will mean that Newcastle progress 3-2. As for the other game, it is Liverpool and Tottenham, as we've already said. Tottenham hold a 1-goal lead, travelling to Anfield here. So once again, we will start with the side that are trailing, and that is Liverpool, who, let's be honest, have shown no real signs of dropping off, despite that defeat to Spurs on the opening leg. They won in the FA Cup. They've won all of their Premier League games, bar the 1-1 away draw to Nottingham Forest, which has not dented their title credentials by any stretch of the imagination. They drew 1-1 with Forest, as we've already mentioned. Arsenal drew 2-2 with Villa. So their lead at the top of the table has not shifted since their 1-0 defeat to Spurs. And yes, they did lose to PSV in the Champions League, but they played basically their kids, and they still won the Champions League table. So it's not like that's affected them either. In terms of their first team, in terms of their performances, there has been no drop-off from Liverpool. As for Spurs, I mean, it's been well documented. 1 point out of 21 in the Premier League up until their victory at the weekend, which was an impressive victory, a 2-0 win away at Brentford, who are a very strong side at home. The only thing that's really been saving Spurs over the last few weeks has been their European form. Victories over Hoffenheim and Elfsborg has sort of managed to keep them going. It's got them into a good position in the Europa League, and I think it's given them that confidence to then go and get that Premier League win finally with that result away at Brentford. But it is Spurs, and with the season that they're having, the injuries just keep on piling up. The latest players to pick up injuries, James Maddison, and despite returning just last week, it looks like Van der Ven is now injured once again. The good news for them is that they actually did go into the January transfer market, certainly on deadline day, picking up Danso for the centre-back coverage, which they desperately need, with Romero and Van der Ven once again injured, and now Dragashin confirmed with an ACL injury. And of course, the Matthias Tell deal that they completed last night alone with an option to buy. Likelihood is both of those players will come into this team. Whether or not it'll be in the starting lineup, I guess, again, remains to be seen, but they'll definitely be in the matchday squad. For Liverpool, there aren't really any sort of updates you can give other than that Joe Gomez is still injured. Everyone else is fit and available. As we've already mentioned, they're winning every single game that has mattered over the last few weeks. They are flying. They are at home. What I would say is the last 2 games between these two sides at Anfield have been 4-3 and 4-2 to Liverpool, respectively. There have been some absolutely crazy games at Anfield between these two sides over the last couple of seasons, so I would expect goals in this one. I'd also say that Spurs have not won at Anfield since 2011, and have only got 4 draws in the 14 games since then. So there is a lot of precedent to say Liverpool will, of course, go on and get the win here. They're the best side in the league at the moment. Spurs are languishing down near the relegation zone at the moment. And I just don't think Spurs are going to have enough. Look, they've got a lead to protect. They managed to keep Liverpool out in the first leg. Can they do it under the lights at Anfield? I would be very, very shocked. Liverpool are scoring goals for fun at the moment. And obviously, like we've already mentioned, there's been a lot of goals in this fixture over the last couple of seasons. I'm going for a Liverpool win. I'm going for a 4-1 victory to Liverpool, which will easily see them into the final to face, in my opinion, Newcastle United. But that is going to be it for today's predictions video. As always, let me know your thoughts down in the comment section below. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you very soon.